Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Big Questions, Small Steps. My name is Amanda and I'm glad that you could join me today. So previously in my experience, I have taught Sunday school in the Christian church for, I believe it was 35 years. And I even taught confirmation for 5 years. And some of that time was double, just in case you're wondering. I taught confirmation and Sunday school at the same time for quite a few years. But I've had a couple of people speak to me regarding questions in particular about, well, what was confirmation like? What was Sunday school like? Because they never had that experience. So here's today's video. I'm going to give you a little bit of an insight to help you understand what Sunday school looked like, and then we're going to dive more into confirmation. Specifically, what was my experience when I went through confirmation? What did I do? Like, how did I get to teach confirmation? What was it that I taught curriculum-wise? And then we're going to go through the confirmation service as well. So, to start off Sunday school is where we're going to start. When I was growing up, I was about 6th, 7th grade, when I started helping in what was called Vacation Bible School. Basically, it was a week during the summer when you would do activities, and it was kind of like daycare or babysitter for the kids that were typically on summer school. Or on summer break from school, and they would do activities, they would hear a story, they would play games, they would have a snack, all revolving around different Bible activities or Bible stories. So I remember helping and being like an assistant leader or something like that, and you basically help the kids with their crafts and you help them color and write their names and things like that. And I enjoyed that. I enjoyed feeling helpful. I enjoyed feeling like I had a purpose and I wasn't just along for the ride because my mom was doing it. I enjoyed that. So when I got to be in 8th grade, it was the second year of my confirmation year, I actually received, I believe they called it a waiver, that I could help in Sunday school. And I team taught the first year with a woman named Nancy, and she was wonderful and very encouraging. And basically what would happen is the kids would come to the room, they'd be dropped off by their parents. We would take attendance and they would play for a little bit because I taught kindergarten. And then we would read a story, we would do a craft or a project, and then we would gather at the end of the class for music time. And that was the whole Sunday school came together and they would practice different songs for the Christmas program or whatever. And that was Sunday school. And every week there was a new story. And it didn't necessarily matter if you came every week or not. They tried to encourage attendance by having a perfect attendance award. But as more and more families became divorced or there were more activities on the weekends for kids to participate in, whether it's soccer or whatever, attendance started to dwindle, and that was normal. But I enjoyed being able to interact, and I enjoyed babysitting for kids. I enjoyed that. I thought it was fun. I liked teaching them new things. That was exciting for me. And even if they didn't fully understand what I was talking about, I loved being able to introduce them to God's love in some way, shape, or form. I enjoyed that. I enjoyed helping them make sense of their crazy world around them that they couldn't understand. So I remember in particular, one day there was a baptism happening in the church, and my class went in when the church wasn't in session, and we went into the sanctuary and we looked at the baptismal font and we looked at what was happening, and we kind of talked about the different parts. We previewed essentially what the baptism was going to be like. And in the church that I was a part of, once you're baptized, there was like this little silhouette of a head And they pinned those on different banners, and they moved them every year until you were eligible for Sunday school. They called that the cradle roll. So it was very exciting for them to see and understand it in a more in-person way than when they were just in church with their parents, if they went to church with their parents and were just supposed to sit and listen. It was neat for them to make those connections. I enjoyed that. After teaching Sunday school classes for a number of years, I taught mostly kindergarten, but I did bounce around to a couple of different age groups when they needed me to. And then I started to take more of a leadership role. So I would do the music director, and I would either teach a class and do music, or I would just do music. But I would be in charge of organizing the Christmas program, picking out the play, running the play, doing the music, all those different things, because that was a skill that I thought I could offer. So that's what I did for that. After a while, I started getting very drained, and I felt like I am going through the motions, and I'm starting to resent coming to church. I was resentful of the fact that everybody else that was my age and confirmed was no longer a part of the church. They weren't active at all. They weren't in the choir. They weren't in handbells. They weren't in Sunday school teaching. They didn't even come to church. And I got irritated by that and a little frustrated, and I decided I wanted something new. Again, a lot of I's because I was focused on me. So I took a back step, and after some reflection, I determined that there was a need for me to stretch myself and take those connections that I had when they were in my kindergarten class and move them forward. So I became active in the youth groups, and I helped different groups form their understandings with each other, help them feel like there was a safe place for them to ask questions. I enjoyed that. I enjoyed helping kids take a step outside of their comfort zone for personal growth. They were supported. I loved being able to support them in their growth. So once I started being actively involved in the youth group, then I started feeling more drawn or pulled to participating in confirmation and making that a more personal connection for them. Because when I was in confirmation, it was not personal. When I was in confirmation, we went our 7th grade and 8th grade years. We were confirmed at the end of the 8th grade year, and it was every Saturday typically. We met for about 45 minutes with the pastor in the basement of the church, and there was a lot of book work. There was a lot of talk of what was called the Heidelberg Catechism. The church that I was a part of was German Reform before it was UCC, and there was a lot of really strong German traditions in that church, and they talked of when they used to go to confirmation, they were told to memorize these different things, and there was a questioning period where if you wanted to be confirmed, you essentially had to prove yourself by standing in front of the congregation, and the congregation members could ask you any questions. And you had to be able to respond to those questions and answer them. And some of them might be about the Bible, and some of them might be about your personal beliefs or different things like that. When I went through confirmation, we didn't have the Heidelberg Catechism, but we did have very structured activities. All of our classes, I can remember each year I had a binder that was probably this big, and there were worksheets every single class period that we would complete. And the pastor had a chalkboard that he would be taking notes on, and we were all sitting in a semicircle in desks, and we wrote notes, and we looked at Bible passages, and we didn't really discuss the Bible passages. What would happen is we would read the Bible passage and we would say what we thought it meant, and then the pastor would either confirm or correct what that passage was actually telling us. If we were correct, great. If we were wrong, we had to accept that we were wrong, take his word for it, and move on. There wasn't really discussion that happened around it. But that was about it. There wasn't really any expansion activities that came with the confirmation class. They didn't necessarily go and do things. There was, in the church that I was a part of, there was a general feeling like the kids owe the church something. So that it was expected that the kids would do a live nativity, for example. That it was expected that the kids were supposed to offer their services to everybody else. If there was something that needed to happen, say there was a dinner that was going to be happening and everybody wanted the dinner, but nobody wanted to wash the dishes for the dinner, it was expected that the kids would fill that role and that they would just do it because nobody else wanted to, but if they wanted to be part of the church, they should suck it up and do it. So that was my experience going through confirmation. In my experience, when we are near the end, you started writing what's called a statement of faith. Basically, it's what you believe. And we started working on that probably the beginning of our second year. And it was a stressful thing. It was a paper that was written and you revised it multiple times, and it was always very hush-hush regarding what other people wrote or what they believed or what they were including and what you were supposed to include. And you had to meet with the pastor one-on-one and talk about what you wrote in your statement of faith. And then you had to, in all of your 8th grade confidence, stand up during a church service and read your statement of faith. Okay, that's not terrible, but if you're attending the church service, I can tell you I was confirmed in a group of, oh goodness, I want to say it was either 12 or 16, somewhere in there. So you can imagine after hearing 10 speeches by 8th graders, you don't care anymore. You don't want to pay attention. So that service was long. By a long shot. It was a long one, but everybody had to go and read their statement. And it was provided in print in case people wanted to hold you accountable to your statement of faith in later days. So that was a statement of faith. The next week, we then had our confirmation ceremony, or it was confirmation Sunday. So we would dress up in these white gowns and we would be called up and we were asked certain questions. We were told what the answers were supposed to be. And then there was like this bench thing. We called it a kneeler. You had to kneel on, and the pastor was going to put his hand on your head. Then he was going to put his hand underneath your chin and have you look up. And then he was going to put this stole. It kind of looked like a scarf that was decorated with certain things around you to signify that you were confirming your baptism vows and you were now a new person in Christ and you were a member of the church because you were old enough. And then after that ceremony, you typically had cake from the church, and then depending on your family tradition, you typically had family members that came and had a celebration with gifts to mark that milestone of you taking responsibility for your beliefs and your relationship with God. That's typically what happened for me. And then I didn't leave after that, but most people, after they're confirmed, they don't attend church anymore. Or they would certainly decrease their amount of attendance or participation, and they might disappear completely until they have a family or they get married, and then they might start coming back again for a little while. I didn't ever really leave, so I was always trying to figure out where I needed to be. How do I fit in, being it as I was an in-betweener. I didn't have a family, but I wasn't in high school. I wasn't in college. I didn't know where to fit. So what I liked about my confirmation process was it was done in 8th grade. I liked that. I liked that I felt important, but that's just a me thing. I liked being the center of attention for a moment because I felt like I was worthwhile. I don't know, in retrospect, looking back at my experience, if I really learned that much from the confirmation class, quite honestly. I remember being very fixated on Y2K. So I graduated, for example, in the year 2000, and Y2K was just starting to be talked about more when I was in 8th grade. And I became very Debbie Downer, and it doesn't matter what I want to do in the future and this and that thing because we're all going to be dead. And I know I was a bit dramatic, shocking, right? I don't remember any big aha or enlightening moments from confirmation. That's not to say that my pastor did a terrible job. I think it was more just that's where I was in 8th grade. 8th graders, 7th graders, they aren't really spiritually mature enough to take a lot of things seriously. And I don't know that that has changed. And I don't know that moving it to high school is going to be any better. There's so much learning that happens that I don't know that there's a perfect age to get confirmed. Me personally, it is interesting. But okay, so I got off topic a little bit. So that was my experience in confirmation. I taught Sunday school first. I felt the need to do more to further my relationships with these kids that I had at the beginning, to help them through these new experiences so that they're willing to ask questions, to make decisions, to step outside their comfort zone. So there was one year in particular that I decided, nope, I'm done with Sunday school. I'm frustrated that I am the one that is doing everything. I'm organizing the lessons. I'm the one coming to make sure the classrooms are ready, and I'm the one that fills in if somebody doesn't show up. I was irritated by all of that, so I decided I wasn't going to help in Sunday school. Okay. And then I was approached and asked if I would help in confirmation. And that year that I was approached to help, they moved from doing confirmation in 2 years to do a 4-year confirmation program. So it went 7th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade, and they would be confirmed in 10th grade. So right around the time they would get their license is when they were confirmed. And I never really fully agreed with the 4-year plan. I understood their reasoning, and that they basically said, 7th and 8th graders aren't ready for that commitment. I completely agree, but I don't know that 9th and 10th graders are any more ready for that commitment. They're just at a different place in their life, and you're just pulling at them more, pulling from the school sports, pulling from social commitments, and I didn't feel like the 4 years was going to increase any engagement on their part. So I disagreed with that. My first year, I taught about the Old Testament. And I'm not sad to say I hated it. I hated it because I didn't know the Old Testament. In Sunday school, if we have Sunday school for, say, 40 weeks, we maybe have maybe have stories from the Old Testament a quarter of that time. And they were specific stories that rotated every 3-ish years. So we talked about Moses in the basket. We talked about Noah in the ark. We talked about the creation of the world. But then we wouldn't talk about it again for 4 years or 3 years. Yeah, I didn't have a strong background in the Old Testament. So I when I was given my task of, okay, so you're going to teach the Old Testament. And I was literally given a bunch of DVDs about different people in the Old Testament. And they basically said, just watch these with the kids and that will take you through the year. I'm not just okay, let's supervise you as you watch a video type person. That's not me. I want to have more engagement than that. So I believe we made it through the first video. And I'm like, oh, hell no, we're not doing that anymore. So I changed it. And I tried to focus on different things. I would go through and I would watch the video and I would try to like get different key points about this person's life. So I remember that we watched a video on Joseph and we watched a video on Solomon and we watched a video on David. And like I would go and I would try to get key points of their life, and I would either make different games to reinforce things, or we would watch different video clips or updated videos, or we would read articles, different things to try to get that point across. And I struggled greatly because I didn't understand it, and I didn't necessarily see the point or purpose in the Old Testament. I figured it's done, it's over, like we have Jesus, it's all good, we don't need to worry about that anymore. Again, knowing what I know now, I should have paid more attention and I could have done a lot more things, but that's not what happened. So we made it through. It was not pleasant. I didn't care for it. The next year I was given a different class. And the next year we actually condensed. We went from 4 years down to 2. And what we did was we took each year that was and we made it into a half a year. So the first year of confirmation, the second year it went Old Testament, New Testament, and then it went church polity or church history and faith in action. Faith in action is where my passion area was, helping the kids find answers for themselves, figure out what fit best for them, helping them learn about the different religions that are around them that they could be participant in, and really help them dive into owning what do they believe, because I remember struggling greatly with that statement of faith when I was in confirmation. And I still struggled the entire time I was in UCC with what do I believe? What do I believe about God? What do I believe about Jesus? What do I believe about everything? So the second year I went to Faith in Action, and that was the year where I felt like I kind of hit my stride. I really was able to dive in more deeply to the different religions that are around them, helping them understand who they are, what they are, how they connect. That's when we started going on worship visits, and I loved that. In all the classes that I taught, that's the part that kids seemed to really take away the most from. The worship visits and their faith in action activities, we called them. So we went and we fed the homeless, and we camped outside, and I'm not a camping girl, just to let you know. We raised money for different things. We went on a mission trip. We were doing something. We were taking our thoughts and ideas about what it meant to be a Christian, what it meant to be part of God's family and show God's love to other people. We were taking that outside of the church walls, and I felt really good about that. I felt like I was really making a difference in these people's lives, helping them strengthen who they were. And I let them know that it was okay if they changed their beliefs, and let them know that it was okay if they left the church. Now, there were many people at the church who did not like that I said that. They didn't like it at all. And I got in trouble, and they took away some of the church visits that we went on because they didn't like that we were informing them of other religions They didn't want the kids to really know about anything else but UCC. They wanted to keep them oblivious of everything else and just focus on staying in UCC. I didn't agree with that, so I started taking steps back. And when I started taking steps back, I stopped participating in many things in the church. I used to be part of the choir. I stopped doing that. I stopped going to church regularly. I started distancing because I had more and more struggles, and it was becoming very difficult for me. I very much enjoyed helping these individuals make their connections understanding. My goal when I did Faith in Action was every year as we were approaching their confirmation, they still had to write a statement of faith, but I wanted them to make their statement of faith less stressful and more meaningful. So we would do it in stages. So one year, for example, we did trees, and each of the different things in the tree meant something different. So the tree trunk was what they stood firm in. Tree branches were like Bible verses that they felt connected to. The leaves were experiences. Everything had a meaning. There was one year where we had string art crosses. So the nails of the crosses, they could pick whatever design they wanted for aesthetics. The nails of the crosses were what they felt strongest about, or people or experiences that really had shaped their faith. And then the strings were all different colors to represent different experiences. And it really just kind of created that unique connection. And through doing that experience, they were able to really more skillfully articulate what they believed, and then they could write their statement of faith more confidently. In all the years I taught confirmation, I cared for all the kids, certainly, but there was one group in particular. They all happened to be female, and it was a small group. I want to say there was 4, maybe 5, and that group in particular meant the world to me, because I had that group when they were in kindergarten. I had worked with that group closely in their first year. I worked with them in their second year, and we had lots of random discussions when we went on worship visits. We would go and have dinner or lunch afterwards, and it was a deep connection that I didn't have with others. There was a safety that they could ask questions and not be judged. It was unique. I cried during that confirmation service. I'm not gonna lie, I cried. But that meant a lot. I loved when there was a girl in a confirmation class, and I don't know why, I didn't know her from Sunday school, but there was just something about her that I felt a connection. And she chose to confide in me that she didn't want to be confirmed. She thought she was an atheist. She didn't believe that there was a God. She had other things going on with her family to kind of help her to that circumstance. But that's where she was. And I loved the fact that even though she chose not to be confirmed, she felt comfortable enough that she could tell me that. And that was pretty powerful, that we had that relationship. I love that even after these children are confirmed and they've graduated, I still have connections with some of them, and they'll still let me know what they're doing, and if they went to college, if they graduated, if they got married, whatever. It's wonderful that I can have that relationship with them still. Now, knowing what I know now, I do feel guilty sometimes, because what I know now is different than what I knew back then. And if I could go back in time, I would have taught different things and stressed different things. So looking back at the people who have been confirmed, it's very powerful to see that I made a difference in their life. I helped them find confidence to be themselves. I helped them to feel comfortable enough to step outside their boundaries. I love that I have developed relationships that I can continue to see value in moving forward, that they view value in themselves, and that is most important to me. So that's what I experienced when I taught Sunday school, when I taught confirmation, when I went through confirmation. Definitely was different overall than my experiences, but every experience has contributed to where I am today, and I wouldn't take them back. So there you have it. Confirmation in the United Church of Christ. Now you know. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.